The white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. In this political football game, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon.
This is a way where social workers are being complicit, no? Where it's about people are being deported and social workers might be asked in which room does this person live, or when have you seen the person the last time, and social workers are giving these kind of informations to the state forces and supporting deportations, no? And this is something that's I think it's important to say, that social work is used to not only to surveil but also to deport.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Black Radicals. This is our fourth episode. It's very surreal. We're 2 months strong. Thank you everyone for being part of the Black Radicals and everyone who's contributed and helped in producing this podcast. Hopefully we're going to sort of try to level up a little bit, be a little bit experimental going forward. One of the ways in which we're going to do this is we're going to have actually a different kind of guest or guests on today. Before we talk about books, and we're going to continue doing that, obviously, but today we're going to be talking to frontline workers, social workers. The reason why we're doing this is because increasingly social work has been racialized. I'm sure many people who are listening to this, either themselves or know people who work, I don't know, in assisting in kindergartens or teachers or nurses, or for this case, social workers or translators and so on and so forth. People who are dealing with the crisis of social reproduction, basically. And this job specifically, or these kinds of jobs, are more and more racialized and gendered. And I think for us to have radical anti-racism, we need to also talk about that part of the economy and see what these frontline workers are saying, and perhaps sort of move towards unionizing and move towards getting these workers together. It's difficult, but hopefully we start these things with conversation. And in that spirit, we have an awesome, amazing conversation with them today with these two lovely social workers. I certainly have learned a lot from them, and I hope you do as well. As always, like, subscribe, share widely. I'm sure many people listening are going to relate to a lot of the things that have been said in this episode. If you yourself are a nurse or a teacher or a kindergarten assistant or whatever it is, and you sort of resonate with the conversation today, you can always get in touch with us at blackradicalsgermany@gmail.com, or alternatively, you can reach us at Instagram, which is at black_radicals, and that is us. This episode is a long episode, and we have two great guests. And so we've decided to split the episodes into 2 1-hour episodes. And so this is the first of the two. And enjoy, and please don't forget to share. I am happy and glad and excited to have a conversation with two social workers, Alina and Suha. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we can hopefully have a very interesting and meaningful conversation. Okay, Alina, would you like to introduce the audience to yourself?
Hi. Thank you for having us. First, my name is Alina. I grew up in a small city in south of Germany, and since 15 years, more or less, I'm very up for social work, care work, everything around it. I'm currently working with families, supporting families through difficult times. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So how would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course. I just wanted to take this opportunity to also say thank you for having us on your platform. And my name is Suha. Grew up in Africa, I've been working in the social care system for about a long time in different countries and currently working in Germany for the past 4 years. And I've been working within the refugee system. I've practiced, as I said earlier, I've practiced social work in different parts of Africa and Europe, and my journey has really been shaped by navigating different cultures, languages, and systems. And as an African woman working in Europe, I've experienced both the challenges, the growth that come with that space, and the work centers around supporting refugees. So thank you again for having us on your platform.
Yeah, of course, of course. It's really my pleasure. How's your experience working in social work? How's your 15 years of working? Like, have you seen any differences in the past 15 years? And what do you exactly do in social work?
Bam. I mean, social work itself is a huge terminology for just a lot of different fields and a lot of different works. And I think for me personally, when I started, like in Germany, it's quite popular to, when you finish school, you do like a voluntary service. And for me, for example, this was the first time I got in contact, like outside of maybe babysitting or private life work, which is also, I think, very valuable, but of course in a professional centered way, during these voluntary services that a lot of young people are doing, where you are pushed to work in fields that mostly are underpaid and undervalued, and a lot of people coming there with no experience and start to do very sensitive and very in the end high qualified, we should think it should be high qualified work, and this is something that we see all over the social spaces, that what is very common in our patriarchal capitalist societies, that it's underpaid, it's undervalued. And we see it, I mean, shifting the more we move towards fascist or purely fascist. I mean, this is the more it develops, we see that one thing that parties and people in power are doing is directly cutting social funds, no, social projects, cutting especially on marginalized groups that we see, like the queer community, the migrant communities. This is something that for sure in the last years we can really, in Germany, but also in other countries, of course, we see that, no, that the financial aspect, which we are sadly dependent on, is getting shortened more and more, even though it was never big, and now it's even getting less. So for sure, this is something that we have to talk about and watch out. And then it's also about generally like the privatization of social work, which is a huge problem in Germany as well in other places, that like people are making money with social work. No, like for example, in like Suha mentioned before, when we watch the system around asylum or people who seek refuge in Europe, it's a huge business. Like it's made like so many companies are getting rich with that, no? And this is something that it's very I think scary, but also very dangerous, no? Because the more companies want to make money with social work, the more the people are pushed in already precarious situations, like we see in the camps, no, refugee camps. It's the places that should not exist, and this is due to capitalist patriarchal values that are shaping a lot of people's minds, that it's made for a business and profit, no?
I think that's so interesting. I think you highlight two dynamics, which is the first one is like the more a government or a state moves rightwards or like, you know, intensifies its like fascist violence or fascist grip over the state or whatever, the more you see like the lack of funding for like social work, for example, or care work or reproductive labor. And then simultaneously, you see the commodification, the increased financialization and commodification of this care labor, which also like even more sinisterly, like people start making money off. It's interesting to hear you say, like, for example, there's a lot of money in like social work. I think there's a lot of money for people who are super who own these businesses, but it's so
Yeah,
underpaid, right?
that is true.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you tell us about your experience, like you were saying, for example, in working in different places, different countries, and how do
Okay.
you find the differences? It's all good.
First, I think I just want to tap into a little bit about social work and the undervalue and the underrating of social work.
Yes.
Just like Alina said, I also believe that, it's deeply undervalued socially and structurally. Like a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's care work, and historically speaking, care work has been feminized and racialized, seen as an instinct rather than skill. But what we actually do requires emotional regulation, it's crisis management, political awareness, and critical thinking. So we don't produce profit, but we prevent collapse, if I may put it in some way. And we prevent homelessness, maybe child neglect, mental breakdowns, and prevention is invisible. So, as for my experience, I would just want to say that I've worked in Africa, I've worked in the UK and Germany, and each place has its own story, honestly. Maybe in
Okay.
Africa, there's this familiarity of cultural grounding. And in the UK, the main thing was the language. It gave me confidence because, I could articulate myself fully, which made me navigate things on challenges easier. But Germany was different. Learning the language while establishing myself professionally was very difficult. There were moments
Yeah.
where I felt like I was shrinking parts of myself just to adapt into the system. And even
Oh,
questioning whether I was losing pieces of who I was really
wow.
a difficult challenge for me.
Can you help
Integration.
us? So I just
Sorry.
wanted to ask you, like, can you help, like, can you help us understand what that is? Like, why did you feel that you're losing a sense of yourself? Is it because of the Is it because of the
Yeah,
belonging?
it was mostly because of the sense of belonging. And I think a big part of that, not just for me, but for like everybody who has to come into Germany, the language is usually one of our biggest obstacles that we have to just pass, or like our biggest challenges. So yeah, sometimes it just makes you think like, okay, am I losing part of myself? Or sometimes it makes you question whether you're losing pieces of who you are or not. And
Yeah.
integration is not just about language exams, it's emotional and tied to identity. So
Mm.
yeah, social work has been heavy at times. It's a really sensitive and heavy topic because it includes carrying others' traumas while navigating your own displacement. That's that's that's
Interesting.
that's not light work. But through
Okay.
profession,
Yeah.
yeah, through profession you gain something meaningful.
Okay.
And
But that's so powerful what you said, I think, like holding these two tensions together. Like, can you elaborate? Sorry, like to zoom in, but can you elaborate? I thought that was very powerful because we a lot of the times, even when we do talk about social work, we talk about, for example, the people that we care for, but not necessarily the carers themselves, like the people who do the caring, such as you guys, and the toll and the let's say the weight that comes with it. For you, Alina, how does it how was social work for you? And I think something that you spoke about earlier about, for example, the turn towards fascism or like right-wing politics and the rise of the right-wing politics and stuff like this. I personally don't think there's a rise. I think it's always been like nationalistic and stuff like this, but so goes the discourse. Like how do you balance this? Like, for example, on the one hand side you value the work that you do, for example, and care for the people that you care for, but simultaneously you have like this, I don't know, government or state or like the people who basically employ or like fund these different organizations
yeah.
who might not have the same goals in mind. How do you navigate these things?
That's a good question. I think one sentence that popped up directly in my head is like, people always repeat better this than nothing, you know? So this idea of like shrinking critiques or ideas of, hey, the social sector should not be like that, to at least we still have some projects. No, at least we still have, like, for coming back to the topic of refugees camps, for example, no, saying like, okay, better there are camps than compared to Italy, Greece, where people live in the streets and like wait for months to be hosted. And then when you look at the receiving centers in Germany, they are horrible lagers, no places, but they are better than nothing. So this is what people, I think, also, especially people who live this themselves, keep repeating, no, like, at least we have a little bit, at least you are here, at least, no, like trying to make the best out of the little. But of course, as social workers, like Suha said already, we are keeping the system also running, no? Like, it's a part of preventing bigger crises, or trying to keep also social peace, maybe to say it that way, in the smallest precarious way possible, no? Because it's not enough what is happening. And then we always have, especially connected to fascism, like, social work is used as a surveillance machinery also. No, like, it's not I mean, it's not out of solidarity that social projects or housing or whatever exists, but it's out of control and surveillance. And also to keep, I mean, we have to look at it, I think, also what is a lot often forgotten, like classism is like, social work exists also to keep classism alive, not to pretend that everyone can make it and it's your own fault when you're poor or down in the hierarchy of classes, because there is everyone having the possibility, which is like a lie in the end. So I think that that's very important to remember when we speak about social work, that it's not something that comes out of solidarity in the first place, but like from the state, but out of the way of keeping social peace, no? Or maybe peace is a big word. It's not peace. Keep social hierarchy. That's the better word. It's something to keep the social hierarchy in place, maybe.
That's so interesting. I think, especially the aspect about like, it's not out of solidarity. It's not like the goodness of the state's heart for them to like help people, but to like maintain this classist or class society basically, and like the ideology of like, it's your fault for not being quote unquote rich or quote unquote successful or any of that kind of stuff. I wanted to ask, is this something that you think a lot of your colleagues sort of understand, or a lot of your colleagues know, or even you know, the people that you work with, for example, do you think, you know, a lot of them are aware that you guys are basically an arm of this a surveillance state, let's say, or an arm of a state that wants to control populations, or like create a class, like continue the class society and stuff like this? Or do you think this is just something that you picked up on in your experiences?
I think it really depends where you work and with whom you work, and what is the person's experience. Because when we look at German universities or European universities, when you study social work, the things you read, the things you study, they come like, they are not critical about social work. Like, there's this vague discussion of like, do social workers have a political mission, or do social workers have like only the state mission, or the people we are working with mission? No, like, this is a little bit discussed, but I think when I think back of my university experience and the education you get, this is nothing that is talked about. And I think that we have a lot of social workers working in offices now and being completely disconnected from people's realities. And I think that this is a phenomena that is very broadly spread in social work, that even though social workers may be in contact with people who have different realities than themselves, there's still a disconnection from we live in the same reality. Like there's not different reality. And actually, this is a term that in German university, they teach us that people have different different living realities, different milieus, or however you want to call it, no? But they literally teach that to people, that like your reality is your reality, but other people have another people reality, and don't connect that we have one reality. We're just in different privileges, in different violences we live, in different segregation that keep us in different realities, but they are not different, they are the same, they are just injustice. No?
Yeah. And that's really interesting.
Can
Sorry,
I
I
add
cut
on
you off.
something?
Yes, of course, Suha.
I'm still on the topic, that contradiction between care work and surveillance. To be honest, I think there is a real contradiction in social work, especially within the asylum systems, because that's what we work in, and really we can only talk about that. And we are positioned as caregivers who are building trust, of offering support, creating safety. At the same time, we operate within systems of documentation, right? With reporting and institutional control. So care implies protection, but surveillance implies monitoring here. And we all know that we don't design these systems, but we function within them. So there's an ethical tension between supporting individuals and being part of institutions that regulate their lives. So acknowledging that contradiction is important if you want to practice critically and ethically. It can be a bit hard to tap in, honestly.
How is your experience like tapping into that? How do you navigate this? Because it is very difficult, right?
Yeah, it's very difficult because sometimes you act in a way, but you are always reminded that whatever you do, you don't have the power and the authority. You're in the system, and you might not like it, but you have to act the way they want to. So like sometimes you're forced to act. You're forced to act in a way that you don't want to act, but there's no choice because that's the only thing that you can do. Because of course, because of the surveillance and the contradiction between the care work and the surveillance system, but there's no other way to go out, actually, if we just want to go, or we have to walk side by side.
Because I think a lot of listeners might not be social workers. So how can you give us like an example of like a situation where you acted a certain way that you might not wanted to act, but you were forced because of the rules and regulations and stuff like this?
Yeah, I think that's a complex question, but what I could say is like, I work for the state, okay? And at the same time, I'm aware that migration and asylum policies are not neutral.
Yeah.
So structural inequalities affect people, especially, I don't want to say people of color, but I would want to tap into this section because I'm also a person of color and I'm also a Black Muslim woman. So I want to really talk about this because I have a little bit experience on this aspect. So but I cannot ignore that broader political context, At the same time, I don't design policy, I navigate it. Like my focus becomes ensuring that refugees understand their rights and are treated fairly within the framework that exists, Walking inside the system does not mean I uncritically adopt everything it represents. sometimes being inside allows you for small but meaningful advocacy. It gives you an edge. Like for me, it's about holding two truths at once, acknowledging structural inequality while committing to ethical practice rooted in dignity and justice. So yeah, representation really matters. Like being a Black Muslim professional within state institutions subtly challenges assumptions, about who belongs to positions of authority. Sometimes it works in our favor because some people might look up to us and they like feel, how do I put this? They feel connected or like they feel you because they are living like you. So, but sometimes it might also work against you. So it can play in both ways, honestly, depending on the situation at that moment.
I think one of the questions that I would like to ask you, Soha, is like we see like how racist policies or like systemic racism in society affects, for example, people who are cared for. But does this also affect you personally? So, for example, like obviously we have a border regime where people are not welcome, like not like you're not welcome to come into Europe just like that. You know what I mean? Like there is borders that stop these things, and so maybe like asylum seekers and refugees might like experience like this border regime directly. But does the structural racism that comes with it affect you personally as someone who works as someone who works in Germany, but also as someone who works in the in the social care sector?
hmm Okay, first, what I want to say is like um, being a Black Muslim social worker in Germany is really layered, honestly. As a Black woman, there are moments where my authority feels subtly questions, surprised when I'm introduced as a professional. Like, okay, like in Europe, we all know that black is like often associated with foreignness, regardless of education or position. So yeah, language adds another layer. German is not my mother tongue, and in many concepts, accent is also unconsciously linked to competence. So that's also a challenge I also face a lot and often until now I'm facing because my German is still not that fluent as expected. But yeah, small corrections or simplified speech can amplify doubt. And yet, navigating complex legal and social systems in a second or third language is intellectual labor that often goes unrecognized sometimes. So yeah, as a Muslim also, there's another part. This is also a complex part because I'm a Muslim that I don't wear hijab as a Muslim woman. So some people don't immediately categorize me as a Muslim. So when I disclose it, sometimes the reaction isn't curiosity, it's like prescription, and as if others feel entitled to define how I should practice my faith. And yeah, also not just among like the people I work with, but also among the people I'm trying to help, like the refugees. Sometimes my
Yeah.
identity can build bridges, but I have to be careful not to over-identify.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think this is so interesting because like it makes like working so complex because it's not just like what's written in your job description about like you have to come to work at like 9 o'clock, leave at 5, and like do these things. But there's so many layers to like your job as well, like layers that are basically you have to navigate them yourself, like how refugees or how people that you care for relate to you, how you relate to the state, and vice versa and stuff like this.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. It's very difficult to navigate sometimes, honestly.
One of the things that actually motivated me to like interview or have you guys both on for this podcast is like I saw you guys engaging with each other, and I really thought it was really really nice. And I just wanted to ask if how is it like? I saw how you said something like the relationship that you guys have together was one of the best things to come out of social work. So I wanted to just ask, for example, you know, is there like a lot of solidarity between you guys, like you guys personally, but like with like the social workers, generally speaking? Is it like a small, so is it like a strong community, or is it more like parcelized or like separated?
I think it's true that as we go to work, we don't use machines. We use our own bodies, we use our brains, our emotions, our uh, skills, our nervous system. No, like Suha was saying before, it's about carrying other people's trauma or holding the space for it. No, so you need to do this in a proper way. You need a lot of skills, and you need to recharge yourself after that, no, because you give a lot and we are not robots. We are human too. So being confronted with all this violence and injustice on a daily basis, you need to have strong relationships and friendships and community bonds to be able to do that. No, I think in the social work sector, we have a lot of burnout, a lot of people who, after years of social work, they just cannot handle anymore. And yeah, like you said, I think between Soha and me, like we met at work. So, and out of this created, I think, yeah, forms of sisterhood that is like precious and priceless, because I think it's starting to be also becoming to be a political movement or a part of a political form of being active, when you start to see your job not only like a job, no, because there are people who go to work and they can finish work and go home and don't think about anything what happened at work. But I think in the social sector, this is barely possible. Like, I think it's impossible. Maybe some people can, but I think, I mean, only the topics we just spoke about now in the first minutes is like, it's a lot that you know are confronted with, and you don't only see it, but you live it. No, like everything Suha just shared is very violent reality. And I think that this is something that, especially in Western Europe, friendships, communities, and relationships are very often very toxic, no, because of hundreds of years of actively destroying community life, actively destroying family bonds, actively like preaching ways of social isolation and individualism and concurrence. I don't know if that's the correct word. Like, that you don't see your people next to you as your people, but you see them as enemies, because you're fighting for social status and you're fighting for career possibilities, no? And this is something that is very deeply rooted in the historical traditional ways, no?
Yeah. I think that's so fascinating, especially like if we just take the thing that you said, which is it's almost impossible for you not to take not the trauma, but like, you know, the experiences and like the violence that you. I mean, how correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the picture that I get when speaking to you both, which is the state comes out and says, today we have a policy of increased border controls, and we're going to decrease migrant and refugee status, and we're going to kick out all the Syrians that came here after the war. And you know what? Social workers, here you go. This is your problem to deal with. and and then, obviously it's, like you said, it's not just the work that a care labor, but it's care labor, political work, organizing. It's, even like Suha was saying, like language plays a role in it, culture and, backgrounds, and, even like the way you're trained to think, like you said, Alina, like, it's just different experience. People have different experiences as opposed to like one universal injustice, let's say. I think, like you said, you have to be very, very, like, it stays with you and you go home with it. And yet it's still undervalued. It's really quite, it's quite crazy how like the state can dump just so much shit basically, and just tell you, yeah, okay, we're gonna pay you shit, you're gonna have shit conditions, and we're not going to compensate you for the emotional labor that you need in order for you to reproduce yourself in private life and sometimes in public and work life. Um, and on top of that, we're going to increase the punishment and the violence on the people that you're caring for as well. It's really quite crazy stuff to think about.
Can I just
Yeah.
tap into that a bit?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, as she was saying, it's true. It's usually heavy, heavy, really heavy most of the times, because it includes like carrying other people's trauma, while trying to navigate your own displacement. So that's not a light work. But as she said, through this profession, I think I also gained something meaningful, like meeting her. So that was
Mhm.
also like one of the beautiful rewards that I could get, meeting a sister, um, a lifetime best friend, from a place so far, far, far away from home, and it always feels like home with her. So yeah, that is one of the things that I got from this profession. And also another thing I wanted to talk about was also the emotional cost, like people
Yeah.
usually think that like this work is just talking about people or doing paperwork, but they don't see like the secondary trauma, the burnout, as she said earlier, or the
Mm.
weight of witnessing racism, poverty, and abuse like daily, that vulnerability in this job that people underestimate. Like you're constantly absorbing other people's pain, and if you're not careful, you can lose part of yourself in this process,
Mm.
And yeah, and as for me, as a Black young worker in Europe, there's always an added layer. It really, social work already carries low status in some contexts, and when you add race and religion, there are moments where your competence is like supply questions, or where you have to feel like you have to prove yourself not once but twice. So the undervaluation is not only financial, it's structural and also cultural.
Mm.
So yeah, I just wanted to add that to it.
It's, I think, even the race dimension as well, and the religious dimension as well. Like you said, I think, from what I understand from you, I think even my experiences, I used to work in social work in the UK as well, but I mean, you're here, right, to like to do a job with like people who are vulnerable and also being like prosecuted somewhat, but legally, so to speak, and then even like as someone who's doing the job itself, your authority might be a strong word, but even like your credentials, your competency, your experience is put into question, maybe because you look differently, or I don't know, your German is not as someone who's born here, or I don't know, you practice a different religion, or you practice religion in the first place. One of the things we talked about previously is how do people who are racialized, for example, people who come, for example, like who take like the trip over to Europe and like sacrifice so much, whether that's like family bonds, whether that's like financial, whether even like some people are facing dangers and like trying to cross borders and so on and so forth. when they finally do get to come to Europe and these facilities, how is their experience after all that? Basically, this odyssey, basically this crazy journey.
Well, what I just want to add on it is like based on like experience and based on stories from refugees themselves, you know. Many of them arrive expecting that safety will automatically mean dignity and opportunity, you know. While they are physically safe, safety does not always translate into belonging. In temporary accommodations like where we are, like these temporary places that they have to be there for some while, then they get transferred into their permanent homes or to the permanent cities. Autonomy is limited, honestly. Shared rooms, regulated food, restricted routines. For people who were professionals or providers in their home countries, this loss of control can feel humiliating. So even after treatment comes, you know, challenges continue. Some, we meet them outside and they start narrating their stories or their difficulties. Some face asylum rejections despite learning the language up to a certain level and entering like vocational training. They're told to integrate, yet often they feel still often excluded. You know, there there are perceived differences in how nationalities are treated, reinforcing the feeling that suffering is ranked, and like financial systems like the social payment cards, withdrawal limits and restrictions on sending money back at your family. So yeah, many refugees don't regret survival; they regret emotional cost of uncertainty, restriction, and not fully belonging. And most of the time, some of them, honestly, they talk about going back home, going back to this war zone countries that they left behind, because for them, they think that they are more respected and valued there. So maybe Alina can talk a little bit more about that.
I'd just like to say, Alina, before you come in, but that's very powerful, Soha. I think someone who traverses like, the Mediterranean and like basically survives death and only to end up in like the shores of like Greece or Italy, and then they have to like sneak their way into like past borders, and sometimes it's in the cold and blah blah blah, and all the way to come here and to try to find refuge and basically, you mentioned, for example, there's a difference between quote unquote safety and quote unquote belonging, right? I mean, you can feel safe, but you can never belong, or you can try to integrate, but you can never belong, and stuff like this. And I think for people to, after fleeing war and, going through this entire journey and, maybe even losing people on the way and losing a lot of money, for them to end up in this place and basically saying, actually, I'm more, I'm given more dignity in literally in a war zone than I am in like this quote unquote civilized part of the world,
I
But
mean,
yes, yeah.
let me just say something, sorry. Like, example, when someone has just arrived after fleeing a war or persecution, you know, they're often in, most of them, they're most often in survival mode, you know. They're overwhelmed, they're disoriented, sometimes traumatized, you know. In those situations, it's really important. I know people prioritize, like, okay, give them accommodation, give them food, give them this, but most of the time, what they need is just stability. They just need stabilization, you know, slow things down, slow things down for them, provide like clear information, and just try to create emotional safety. I think
Yeah.
that is what they need most before anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Just one last point I want to pick up, Soha, and then move on to Alina. One of the last things you said is like now that there's a government rolling out this program where they no longer give them sort of money, like the money they can only use in like Germany and like certain places in Germany, which is
Yeah,
so barbaric, because a lot of people like even migrate so that they can help their sick families and parents back home and try to
yeah,
provide money for their children or
uh,
all of this, and then to come here and even when they do work, they're just given like these basically vouchers that is only you can't even send back to your family because you cannot, even after they work, which is just sorry for my language, which is just fucking crazy.
That is it's frustrating for most of them because it's like they have been restricted and they have been limited to what they have to do and the way they have to live. So like for example, this card you can like I think withdraw like a 50 euros for the whole month and that's it. You cannot do anything with this card, just to like buy food basically. So yeah, it's one of the restrictions and one of the challenges they're facing, honestly.
Yeah, especially like I said, that if you're trying to like send money back to your family, and this is really barbaric to be honest. I mean, I don't know, yeah, it's really crazy. But yeah, sorry, Alina, you want to jump in and talk maybe about your experiences in this regard?
I mean, I'm a white German lady, so I cannot speak about my experience. I asked my friend this morning what she would wish me to say, and I want to quote her. She said, "We do not regret coming, but no one wants to leave their family, community, home place, and then live this here." Like, she put her hand to her head and said, like, they are trying to attack our moral. Like, I think this is something that is not spoken about so much, that the expectations of coming to Europe for a better life, may it be financially or may it be safety or whatever people are searching, oftentimes it doesn't end up, because the stories that are told about Europe all over the world, they are just a lie. No, like Europe as it is portrayed is a lie. Like, it's talked about being the place of human rights, of being the place of justice, of equality, of freedom, and this is very like a lie. Like, of course, there might be no war right now since some decades in these regions, which is not true, because Ukraine, Russia is at war, and we have, like, I think, really,
And Kosovo as well, just to put that in.
of course, and this is something that, like, I think, of course, you cannot speak about everyone's story, everyone's life is different, but something that is really obvious is that the way migration is pushed or forced, it's like planned for money reasons. No, like, Europe needs workers and Europe needs people in precarious living conditions to be available for do whatever it takes to stay here. No, I mean, now we see in most European countries that the deportations has become something normal. Also deportations into war zones, into, like, to Iran, for example, where it's like obvious that people are not safe in a lot of places, but it's used against the people. And maybe, like I said earlier, this picture of you can make it, like everyone can make it, it's a lie. No, like, this is something that is taught to us, and we see that in with a lot of people we meet. Like, even when people are really struggling here, they might not tell their people or their families at home how they really are, to not keep people worried, but also to not, I feel, and maybe I'm reproducing a picture now that is very toxic, but I think we should talk about that, like, there's this idea of when you don't make it, it's your own fault. Like if you fall to poverty or depression or homelessness or mental health crisis, that it is your own fault. And I think that this is something that for me or for us is so important to keep on repeating. Like, this is not individual fault. This is systemic violence, no, that is happening explicitly. And like my beautiful friend said this morning, it's a war against people's emotions and mental health, no, to really, I think Suha also already said that, like, humiliation is a tool that the state is actively doing to keep people available, not to keep people in fear, that they don't speak up, that they do the shittiest jobs in exploitation situations ever, because of the fear if you do one mistake, it might end up that you will be deported. No, and this is something that you cannot just ignore that. No, there's a constant pressure. Like, people are put under constant pressure of having to fit into this toxic society, because if you don't fit in, you're out. No, like, I think that's and here again, maybe to something that you asked earlier, like an example, because now we spoke about or I spoke about deportations. This is a way where social workers are being complicit, no? Where it's about people are being deported and social workers might be asked, in which room does this person live? Or when have you seen the person the last time? And social workers are giving these kind of informations to the state forces and supporting deportations, no? And this is something that's, I think it's important to say, that social work is used to not only to surveil, but also to deport.
Hi everyone, this is the end of episode 4, part 1. There will be a part 2. It will be dropping in the next couple of days. Like I said, we thought to split the one episode into 2 because it was a little bit long. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, and the next one is going to be as informative, so stay tuned. Don't forget to share widely, and I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation.